Hello, my name is Bill Stormont, and I'm here today with Justin Daly, CEO of VR Resources. VR Resources trades on the TSXV under the symbol VRR and on the OTCQB as VRRCF. Welcome to Mining Hub, Justin.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Looking forward to this conversation. There's been a lot going on at VR Resources in recent months, including your appointment as CEO earlier in September. And you've been with the company since its founding. You were the VP Exploration prior to this appointment. You know, one of the things that intrigued me about your background is your exposure or experience with large language models, big data, and neural networks, and AI applications. And we hear about this through all walks of life, but we don't come across very many legitimate stories of a CEO in this sector with bona fide AI experience. So I'll be really interested in getting into more of that in a few minutes, because I think it's going to give us some interesting insights into VR itself. But before we do that, I was hoping we could just touch on New Boston results out last week and really just get a recap there, just to orient things for those who aren't familiar with the project. New Boston's located in a well-established trend. It's between the past-producing Yerington Porphyry Copper Camp and the Cretaceous Hall Moly Copper Deposit. I mean, you've got infrastructure, you've got a great jurisdiction in Nevada, you've got a significant history of prior exploration around there, and now you've got drill results. So could you just run us through or just review the key findings from the two reconnaissance drill holes at East Zone, and then maybe talk a bit about your future exploration plans for expanding the resource potential there, and some of the things that really came out of the program in terms of new target zones, new approaches, that sort of background, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely, yeah. So our exploration in Nevada started in 2017, 2018 when I joined Mike Gunning, the then CEO and current chairman, on a soil sampling program north of Winnemucca. And we've been working more or less nonstop in Nevada, developing copper, silver, and gold assets. And New Boston is certainly one of the biggest and most promising. It's a large porphyry system in the Walker Lane, Cretaceous in age. And it's had a couple drill holes into it since the 60s, discovering over 1,000 feet of 0.08% moly sulfide back in 1967. But what we've been able to do is take some new technology and new geophysical surveys and come in and do a 3D DCIP survey, which gave us the conductor model for our drill test this past spring. That survey was back in summer 2022. And we got 23, and we got the money together to go and drill test this target in the spring. We finished 2 holes, 600 meters and 700 meters respectively, into this conductor, testing this target, trying to see if there is a core to the copper moly silver mineralization that we see at surface in the East Zone, as opposed to the more moly dominated mineralization on the West Zone, the Jeep side of the hill. And what we saw was, it wasn't a home run or a slam dunk, but we saw continuous mineralization in these drill holes, intense potassic alteration, stockwork veining in every single box and every single row of core. We ended up seeing on average 0.05% copper and 0.07% moly, but as high as 0.5 and 0.6% copper and 2,000 ppm moly in one spot in the skarn high in hole 1. And 15 to 30 grams silver as well. So we're starting to see the grades, the high grade in the skarn mineralization. And what it's trying to tell me here, I think, is that there's potential on the margins of this conductor. The conductor, as we see in this section here, is in fact the porphyry intrusion as it relates to the marble around it. The marble is much more resistive. The conductor is the porphyry intrusion. And I think it's on the margins of this in the classic Lowell and Gilbert model of a porphyry system where you're going to see the higher grades. And so those are the obvious targets going forward. And you mentioned what do we have planned next? And that would be an MT survey, magnetotellurics, the same exact grid profile from this DCIP survey, but instead it looks deeper, uses natural field magnetotellurics to image conductors at depth. We want to see where the Jeep zone conductor and the East zone conductor are meeting, and how can we drill test that? What are those geophysical responses going to tell us about where the copper is sitting?
So in terms of future drill plans, then you're using this as targeting to build on what you've done already at New Boston. And are you thinking similar depths or a broader, shallower program? How are you looking at building this out?
Yeah, well, there is good mineralization near surface in the East zone, but this system is plunging with depth about 45, 50 degrees to the north. So it will take some deeper holes, but what we do know so far is that this system is massive. It's 2 kilometers across on just this block. And if you go over to the Blue Ribbon side, even further west, where there's decent copper mineralization, it's about 4 kilometers in strike. So we have a lot of room to work with, and that's part of the challenge as well. Drilling costs are quite high in Nevada. Access to water is really important. Luckily, we have the infrastructure and everything that you would want in a project in Nevada, but because of the scope and scale of this system, and especially in this capital market, it's going to be difficult to get back there immediately to do some drilling. So it's definitely on the docket, and we're looking for partners, big and small, to continue to go after this exciting porphyry system.
So is MT this year or 2025?
It's planned for this winter as schedules permit. We're looking to try and save some money on mobilization of that survey. Right. Next time there's something in the neighborhood. We know that Ivanhoe Electric is nearby. There's numerous other exploration programs going on. There's 4 drill programs while I was there this past spring. So there's a lot of activity, and we're just hoping to piggyback on another exploration effort happening at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll move on from New Boston for now, and I'd like to get into what we were talking about at the outset, and sort of your journey, if we will, because VPXs don't get a lot of airtime. You sort of vital to what's going on, but maybe working in the background more, and now you've become CEO, and you're bringing a unique kind of background to this role, and I was wondering if we could talk a bit about how, well, 2 things. One, your approach, practically speaking, as your role as VPX and now as CEO. I know this has been a transition that's been in the works for some time, and maybe talk a bit about that and what that role brings to your role as CEO. But also, let's get into this background in AI and big data. I mean, you studied this at Harvard. You're in a very hyped interest area. It's one of those areas where a lot of companies want to tag it, regardless of their sector. A bit like, as we were saying before we entered in this conversation, blockchain once upon a time was something that people always tried to associate themselves with greater or lesser degrees of success and claim to it. But for you, my feeling is that as a geo by training, who's come into this space and understands big data, I think it'd be really interesting to understand how that fits into the story as well. And then maybe you could also talk about how that unique background influences what's going to be happening at VR, how it differentiates your approach and your thinking.
Absolutely, yeah. I was actually sitting on the side of a mountain on a Reveille project about 3 years ago. This was before the big AI hype happened. We were in the midst of drilling Hecla Kilmer in Ontario and setting up an RC drill program at Reveille. And I just got to thinking, like, I like being in the field, but I don't like being here for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. I've got a young family. So I randomly applied for this Harvard program, and I guess they liked the idea of having a geologist in the classroom to mix up all the finance and healthcare and military folks that were already there. So I went on this adventure before AI really hit the mainstream. And this was because we were collecting so much data. And these days, whether it's geophysics or drilling geochemistry or surface geochemistry, we really have mountains of data, and most people aren't really using it as effectively as I think we can. Of course, that's changing rapidly, but we're still in the really early stages in the mining industry. We're generally pretty late adopters of brand new technologies relative to, say, oil and gas or just the tech sector in general. So using machine learning early on was what drove me to try and understand more about what my data could tell me, how I could vector in 3D space using the drill hole data that I had, especially working undercover, especially like at the HK project. It's 6 feet of muskeg and 40 meters of till, and we're using geophysics in our drilling and trying to point ourselves in the right direction. So this is a space where I'm hoping to do more of this. A lot of the brownfields exploration has been done. We need to start looking in new areas undercover and using these new geophysical technologies, but we also need to use the AI technologies like machine learning to better guide us and spend less money to discover more. We need to get more efficient with our exploration dollars, especially when they're hard to come by. So that's my sort of background on it, and it was an interesting transition as OpenAI launched ChatGPT and put this all into the forefront. And being a naturally curious millennial, I guess I'm pretty apt to try out all these new technologies that are available, and some of them make writing legal documents faster, and some of them answer your academic queries faster. But we're seeing a lot of interesting things around downloading the entire Ontario assessment file database and using the sort of natural skills that we would have employed as far as reading the mineral resource data reports or the resident geologist reports, finding keywords in there and learning to extrapolate from them quickly, and then taking that information and comparing it to the geological maps and thinking, why hasn't somebody explored here before, and what can we do differently? So that's on the exploration front, what we're doing. And of course, I wanted to step into the big chair and do the CEO thing. Mike has let me sort of get comfortable over the years. He's done a great job mentoring along the way. And as a VPX, I was given more and more opportunities to talk more and more with our investors. So it's not all brand new sitting in the CEO chair, but it's certainly a fun new challenge.
What's the biggest difference other than doing having conversations like this, or the public facing? I mean, in terms of your day to day, how has your life changed?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, it's just busy. It's 24/7. I thought I worked hard before, and it's harder work now. A little bit less field work, but I do intend to still spend a lot of time in the field, especially up in Northern Ontario soon. But the main thing is I guess the buck stops with me. I've got to make the decisions. It's no longer somebody else's problem at the end of the day. If I overspend on a budget, I now am responsible for getting the money in the door and how we spend it effectively. So really a greater sense of responsibility on how we spend that money and what are we going to get out of it. I got to make sure we're spending it as wisely as possible to make a discovery.
So maybe on that note, that's a good place to transition in terms of spending money wisely. Just after New Boston results were released, you announced this acquisition of the 3 copper gold properties in Northern Ontario from Holbeck Exploration. So maybe you could tell us about the projects and how they fit into your strategy. I'd also be curious to know if AI played a role in identifying or analyzing, doing your due diligence on them. But what's the background here in terms of what interests you about them and the opportunity for VR in this acquisition, and maybe too a bit about the relationship with Holbeck in all of this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this actually comes down to good old-fashioned relationship building. I did a bunch of the research on these projects using AI tools, just quickly skimming through as much academic research as possible to verify a lot of what I was seeing and reading and hearing from Byron on these projects. But I met Byron in 2023 at Roundup. He showed up at our booth at the Core Shack where we were displaying our HK Core, which is obviously a success for us. We sold that for $1 million, 4 million shares with Neotech Metals, and they're hopefully going to be drilling some holes up there this fall. So on that long track record in Ontario, we've spent a lot of time connecting with prospectors, and in this particular case, Byron showed up. He had this giant rock full of chalcopyrite and bornite, and said it was from right beside the Trans-Canada Highway. And of course, that piqued my interest. I started thinking about things like Hemlo, and the story of finding something in plain sight is exciting enough. But what Byron has done, he started prospecting, I think, when he was 18, and then got into the family business of forestry. And so again, this isn't necessarily AI, it's just using your talents where they are. And he's got contacts all through the forestry industry. He knows where the forest management plans are taking effect. He's built a lot of the forestry roads into these new areas that we're going to be exploring. So he's turned up some of the first rocks with the dozer a couple of years ago, and has a lot of ideas of where to go next to find new and more exciting ideas. And so Empire, Silverback, and Golden Bear are just, I think, the start. These are projects he's been working on for the last 2 or 3 years, going as far as, I think he's optioned out a couple pegmatites for lithium, and he's doubled down on these copper gold projects. And the reason why I like them is because we're in the space of exploring magmatic hydrothermal copper gold systems, whether they're IOCGs or porphyries in Nevada, or intrusion related gold systems here in Ontario. These big systems, I think, are what we need more of to build mines in the future. Lower grades, but huge systems like Côté, just outside of Timmins, Maple Gold Mines, Douay, projects like that, where to just have the scale where right away you know that you can do something with this. And what Byron and I hope to do here is get on the ground really quickly, use his contacts nearby. He knows everybody within an hour's drive, so we can get a float to move a drill, we can get a dozer, we can get an excavator, and we can do it for as cheap as possible. When you compare what we spent in Nevada at around $600 US a meter at an all-in rate, and I'm sure the contractor spent more than that on the drill program. I actually saved a bit of money there. In Ontario, we're probably going to be spending 150 meters, dollars per meter max on some of these drill programs. Doing first pass till sampling, we know what the ground looks like because Byron's actually spent time on the ground in almost all these places. We know where the till is actually prospective for doing widespread surveys for gold anomalism and things like that. And that's where the AI can start to come in, is using and collecting large data sets to really start gearing towards where we should be steering our exploration dollars.
So just that's that $150 catches my eye. Is that RC drilling?
That'd be core drilling. Right now, there's pretty good rates on drilling. The industry is not as active as I think it should be. But even then, it's just about finding efficiencies in your program, whether it's having that float, the transport on call, moving the drill at the right time so you don't have standby, just managing things. Byron is fond of telling me that in the forestry industry, there's really thin margins, and you got to be thinking on your feet of maybe the mill 1 week wants poplar, the next week it wants pine or something else, and you've got to go find the next stand that you're going to log and provide to the mill to just scrape by on that thin margin. So he's trying to connect the dots as much as he possibly can, and we do have an exclusive consulting agreement with him now that we will be exploring with him. He's got a couple legacy projects that he's working on as well, but the idea being, call everybody in the neighborhood. Do you need a DCIP survey? Can we knock off a couple $1,000s on mobilization costs? Or airborne surveys, the same thing, and likewise with drilling. All about finding these efficiencies to keep our exploration expenditure as low as possible, so that we can keep our chances of success as high as we possibly can.
So how advanced are Empire, Silverback, and Golden Bear? Like, what sort of work's gone into them, and what's the work plan then going forward here?
Sure. Well, a Golden Bear is really quite new. It's something that I think Byron staked this past summer and has maybe 10 samples on it. We're waiting for results on that, which hopefully we can get to market pretty soon. But the visuals on it are great. There's chalcopyrite and bornite and beautiful shatter breccias infield with all sorts of hydrothermal alteration, which aren't typically looked for in Ontario. I'm biased towards porphyry epithermal systems. So when I see things like that with silver in them, I start to think this is an intrusion related system. That's different. And I like different, because if everybody's looking for one thing, Archean load gold systems, that's probably tapped out. Let's try and look for something different. And that sort of leads to Empire and Silverback, where these are actual discoveries. The resident geologist has now written reports on both of them because nothing like this had previously been recognized. And Byron was just following up on palladium in lake sediments. I helped him early on find better ways of visualizing that data and actually clustering it and looking for anomalies. And there's a palladium anomaly nearby. Went looking at the road cut on the Trans-Canada Highway, and he found this disseminated pyrrhotite chalcopyrite that actually had I think it's getting close to almost a gram gold in some of the samples, along with the PGEs, and there's copper as well. So that's an interesting system, previously unrecognized, and there are some features along trend that look similar. As far as work to date, he's done a digim frequency domain survey over the main part of the showing, about a 4 by 5 kilometer survey out of his own pocket. And it's that we hope to follow up with a DCIP survey this fall, and then scout drilling to see if, one of these conductors that is coincident with the gold and PGs and copper on the side of the highway coincides with a nice juicy chargeability anomaly, not directly under the highway, I hope, nearby. That would be great. That would be our first drill target. But the one that has had the most work is Silverback. There's a couple of different showings there right in the middle of the property where you can see that forestry road. There's a couple grab samples with pretty high gold, pretty high copper, and even I think 400 or 500 ppm moly. And again, you don't often hear or talk about moly in Ontario, but of course I'm thinking with my porphyry brain turned on, and I'm thinking this might be signs of a magmatic hydrothermal intrusion system. There's also peridotite nearby, so potential for nickel copper PGE. But at the same time, looking for those efficiencies along with a bunch of other projects in the area, he flew that digim survey, so we've got magnetic data, and with it came some conductors, and that's what he drilled in these photos here. Some of the, I guess, tier 2 conductors, leaving the tier 1 conductors for whoever was going to option the project from him, and that's us now. So we're going to see what these conductors are, and again, use a DCIP survey to look for a large disseminated body at depth that's feeding some of these quartz veins and the mineralization that we see at surface. We feel that this is a place where you have potential for a large intrusion-related high tonnage, lower grade body, and it's on trend with diorite, monzonite plugs, and there's now mapped quartz feldspar porphyries in the core and on the property with a lot of sericite clay alterations. So there's a lot going on. Silverback is probably where we're going to be spending more time early on. I hope to be up there next week, looking at the ground, trying to find some more examples of these quartz veins at surface. And we're going to be looking at places where we can do some low-cost stripping and trenching as well, just to expose more of this system and try and get a handle on structural controls and things like that.
So timeline for this. So we get through the winter, we do the DCIP survey. What should we look at in terms of sequencing and timeline, and where we'll be, say, next spring?
Well, we've got tenders out for the geophysical surveys on Empire and Silverback, as well as New Boston and Bonita down in Nevada. And we're hoping to, I think it's looking like October, but we still haven't confirmed anything as yet. But October for DCIP geophysics, we hope on Empire and Silverback. And we would try and follow that up with some scout drilling this winter as well. These are both road accessible. Silverback is on a forestry road, so we would want to get in there before the snow really starts falling, just to save some money on keeping the road open. But obviously, if you're working off the Trans-Canada Highway, it's pretty cost effective to get a drill in there any time of year. And we'd be hoping to do that sometime this winter, January, February.
Okay, and then so in order to do that, maybe we could sort of wrap up with some thoughts. So, you're talking about drilling, you're talking about drill programs. That means we're talking about money. Will you be looking to raise in the near future? Will you be looking to partner with any third parties, majors? I mean, how do you plan to finance and move forward with the project?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just across the board, start with the foundation. We ended the last quarter with 1.2 million in the treasury, and not a whole lot has happened since then. So that's more or less static, just general G&A. So we're not doing too poorly, but of course you don't want to spend all your money. At some point this fall, there's likely going to be a need for a very modest financing. And overall, with the success of the HK sale to Neotech Metals, something that we have more front of mind is this idea of prospect generation as part of our funding model. Obviously, we want to try and keep as many of the obvious targets for ourselves to try and take a swing at, and some lesser targets or things that aren't necessarily in our core focus, like rare earth elements, can go elsewhere and hopefully provide funding for our actual exploration efforts. So, and then again, something like drilling at New Boston, we're open to having conversations across the board. I think it's an exciting porphyry system, and it needs more money to be spent on it before you write it off. There's certainly a lot of potential there. It's just a matter of having those conversations and seeing where they take us. And of course, in the meantime, with spending very little money in Ontario to get quite a bit of work done, I'm hopeful that we're not going to be sitting around 4 cents for very much longer. My goal is to create some momentum, create some speculation in what we could have, and then, unlike New Boston, where we kind of had all our eggs in one basket on a big drill program with a big budget, is to have a more extended pipeline of opportunities for shareholders to get excited about. I want people to come and look at our portfolio page here on Junior Mining Hub and on our website and say, oh, okay, there's something new here. I like this target. Let's see what they're doing. What do they have planned? And just keep that excitement going in this space, especially while markets are tough for small juniors like us. Thankfully, we are seeing money starting to pour into majors like Newmont, Barrick, and Teck, and Freeport. But the smaller companies like VR are still waiting for that cash injection.
Yeah, I know. Excuse me. It is a challenging market. I think everyone knows that. We've just finished Beaver Creek, and that's certainly some of the feedback that's come out of there. But there's also a lot, I think, optimism for an upturn and for recognition of good smaller companies that are doing good work in good jurisdictions. So, just to close us out, really, is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you, that I overlooked, that you'd like to make sure that everyone hears and knows about VR Resources and your approach, the opportunity, the elevator pitch, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think we covered most of it in this call. The elevator pitch on VR is what we're doing, what we've always done, and that's greenfields exploration on large footprint systems. We're looking for something that a major mining company wouldn't put up their nose in a heartbeat at picking up. If you make that discovery intersection, we're in the right jurisdiction, the right deposit model, we put the right kinds of work into it, so that it's an easy takeout opportunity. That's the goal for VR Resources. So we've got a bunch of awesome new ideas. I think I'm excited to get to work in the coming months, and we'll be updating, I hope, quite regularly through the fall.
Fantastic. Excuse me. Thank you very much for your time, Justin. It's been great to speak with you. Thank you also to everyone who's listened to this interview. If you'd like to hear more, you can check out Mining Hub's website at app.mininghub.com. And Justin, maybe just remind everyone where they can get in touch with you: website, email, social. Where can everyone find VR Resources?
Sure, yeah. Email me, jdaly@vrr.ca. Contact info is on the website, vrr.ca. Most of our social handles are at VR Resources. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Most of them come right to my phone. So please don't hesitate to get in touch, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Fantastic. Thank you again. And I'll just wrap by saying that this discussion is for information purposes only, not intended as investment advice. So neither Mining Hub nor its representatives are responsible for any investment decisions you may make. So please do your own research. With that, thank you again, Justin, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Cheers.